Jewish Channel's Weekly Review. What Netanyahu's new government is already planning, rabbis headed to jail, why this man is celebrating VE Day, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. Expanding government is the theme of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's new government thus far, pushing through legislation this week in which only the 61 members of his coalition voted in favor. The new government seeks to expand the number of government ministers that a prime minister can appoint so that Netanyahu can meet the promises he made to his coalition partners. The legislation was being pushed through on the eve of the swearing in of Netanyahu's new government, with multiple votes still required for it to pass. And for outgoing Religious Services Minister Naftali Bennett, adding hundreds of Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox rabbis to the state payrolls was perhaps his last act in that job. The new minister will come from an ultra-Orthodox party, but Bennett's final push for the Orthodox rabbinate will see a great many of these rabbis paid by the state if they, quote, conduct Torah-related spiritual and cultural activities in communities where household incomes are below average. One rabbi who's giving up money is Rabbi Yoshiyahu Yosef Pinto. A rabbi to the stars, was officially sentenced to a year in prison and fined more than $250,000 for attempting to bribe a senior police official in Israel. Here in America, a rabbi said to be the final co-conspirator in a scheme that stole $9 million from the Jewish poor has been sentenced to a year in jail. Rabbi David Cohen was the former executive director of the Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty. The embezzlement and kickback scheme is said by prosecutors to have involved 6 co-conspirators over 2 decades. Cohen also paid $650,000 in restitution to the Met Council, similar to the $3 million in restitution paid by former CEO Willie Rapfogel and the restitution payments of other co-conspirators. Cohen was not required to disclose the sources of the funds he used to pay restitution. These men received reduced sentences and lax rules for paying restitution while explicitly not cooperating with investigators in a crime that involved, but didn't lead to any indictments against, elected officials at all levels of New York government. Moving on, the recent celebration of the 70th anniversary of VE Day also meant the celebration of an anniversary for some Holocaust survivors liberated from concentration camps. Meredith Gansman spoke with one man who had reason to celebrate.
Last week, on the 70th anniversary of VE Day, Holocaust survivor Ben Lesser, now 87, sat down with the Jewish Channel, having just returned from a trip to Poland, where he returned for the first time to the Dachau concentration camp to celebrate the 70th anniversary of his liberation.
I had mixed feelings. I didn't know how I'm going to take this, but I had a thought, and instantly I asked everyone, please, when we walk out of the bus of Dachau, let's hold hands and sing Hatikva, which they all loved the idea, and we did. And when we walked out singing Hatikva, walking together like this into the camp, I felt differently. I felt good.
Over 11 million were lost in the Holocaust, 6 million of whom were Jews. During the visit, Lesser also met with Rainier Hess, the grandson of Rudolf Hess, who served as a commandant at Auschwitz, responsible for the deaths of over 400,000 Jews. Rainier Hess has since divorced his family, who still believe in Nazi principles, and started his own organization to promote Holocaust awareness, called Footsteps.
Here, meeting two opposite ends of history, different human beings, but from different ends of it.
Yet you experienced something through your past that was
exactly
similar, unfortunately.
Well, if I would have seen in the past a person like Rainier Hess, I would have been frightened. And today I felt a closeness. He wanted to show the world that we need tolerance. We need love.
Lesser spent most of the war being transferred to and from various concentration camps. He arrived at Dachau just 3 days before it was liberated, and still remembers the fateful day when he was finally freed.
I remember 2 GIs walking up to us. They looked like 2 gods walking up to us. And they held a can of Spam. They opened it up in front of us, and the smell of that spam was so, any food, but food, especially when you open that can, the first smell, and we made a mistake, both of us. My cousin and I, we ate some of it.
For more on Holocaust survivor Ben Lesser, tune in to the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Finally, this week on Up Close, making a career in the arts is hard enough. Doing the kind of groundbreaking work that will be remembered for generations is yet more difficult. The Three-Penny Opera changed what we think about theater, drama, and music. The story that birthed it and that surrounded it is told by Pamela Katz in The Partnership, Brecht, Weill, Three Women, and Germany on the Brink. And then, there are a few painters whose work is so distinctive that even a casual observer can instantly recognize their work. Mark Rothko rebelled against the art world to become one of those artists, as Ani Cohen-Solal describes in Mark Rothko Toward the Light in the Chapel. Here are some of the highlights from my interview with Pamela Katz. So, set the stage for us. What makes this moment in time such a valuable point for learning about the kind of culture that we created in the mid-20th century?
The Weimar Republic, as it's known, it's actually an important time in history from both sides. If there had only been World War I, if there had only been the disillusionment of an entire generation of young men who went to fight this devastatingly disappointing and catastrophic war, that alone would have launched, I think, a world of great young artists who were screaming and creating in reaction to the pain that World War I caused all throughout Europe and, of course, the United States. The Weimar Republic has the tragic benefit that they have a war on the other end as well. So there's this very brief, as I say, bright space of time in which people were creating and thinking and reflecting as if their lives depended on it. And it did.
It kind of feels like the eye of the storm that, that theoretically people felt like it was safe to peek their heads out after World War I, not knowing what was coming. And particularly this partnership that you're writing about here between Jewish son of a cantor, Kurt Weill, and a Protestant in Bertolt Brecht, was that even the kind of partnership that you would have thought was possible before World War I or after World War II?
One of the really most powerful effects of World War I was the breakdown of a very rigid class structure. When you had a monarchy, and when you had regions of Germany that were controlled by duchies, by dukes, that attendant upon that, you had a very rigid class structure in which people from different classes didn't mix very much. Now you can say that all over the world at all times, artists are the ones to break down those barriers, but it is another thing again to be an artist breaking down that barrier in the wake of an abdication of the emperor, of the Kaiser, when also people who are middle class and upper class are involved in that class breakdown as well. So you had a sort of reverberating effect. So could they have met? Perhaps, likely not. Can one think about the mixture of Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill, Helene Weigel, who was a Jewish upper middle class woman who ultimately married Brecht, who was raised Lutheran, father was a Catholic. I think one can easily say that's pretty much a product of what was going on in the Weimar Republic.
You can see the full episode of Up Close on the Jewish channel on cable. You can also listen to the full audio of Up Close as a podcast, available on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish channel, be well. The Jewish channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 1640, IOAPLING Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Cox Cable Channel 1, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and on Comcast on the on-demand menu on premium channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.